The 9th century AD, Eastern Europe. Various peoples, both settled and nomadic, inhabit the lands stretching from the Baltic to the Black Sea. These include Balts and Finns in the north, Slavs such as the Polans and Drevelians further south, and Turkic nomads like the Pechenegs, Kipchaks and Khazars along the Pontic steppe. In antiquity, these lands were known as Scythia, and were the home of the mysterious Slavs and Sarmatians. This region would receive another visitor. Norse seafarers, known to us as Vikings, began raiding, trading and settling along the Baltic coast before sailing further inland along its rivers. The Viking Swedes had not been able to take full advantage of opportunities in the west, which were claimed by their neighbours, the Danes and Norwegians. And so they looked eastwards. These Vikings became known to the Eastern Romans or Byzantines as Varangians. Local tribes named them Rus, which is theorized to come from Rutsi, a Finnic word for Swedes or seafarers. It may also refer to their reddish blonde hair. The Norse settlers called their land Gardariki, which roughly translates to the realm of towns. The Varangians are believed to have been behind the establishment of Aldeioborg, an urban centre for trade at Lake Ladoga in what is now northern Russia. It later became known as Staraya Ladoga, or Old Ladoga. Here, Norse-Slavic and Finnic customs began to intertwine. Further south along the Dnipro River lay the city of Kiev, inhabited by a Slavic tribe, the Polans. Kiev's strategic location on the river linked them to the Swedish Vikings in the north, who called it Kunigarder, and to the Khazars in the southeastern steppes, but also to the Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium, in the southwest. Kiev had been established centuries earlier, though it's not known for sure when. The local population in Kiev and in the surrounding region spoke Old East Slavic, the common linguistic ancestor of the Russian, Ukrainian and Belarusian languages. They practiced Slavic paganism and were also likely influenced by Greek and nomadic cultures. Back in Ladoga, the town of Novgorod, New Town, was expanded and established as the seat of power for the Varangians, who named it Holmgard. According to the primary chronicle, or the Povest Vremnych Let, in 862 the native Slavic and Finnic peoples invited Hrorkr, a Swedish Varangian prince, to come and rule the divided territory. Hrorkr was the founder of the Rurik dynasty, Rurik being the Slavic version of Hrorkr. Rurik and his retinue spoke the Old Norse language like their Viking counterparts elsewhere in Northern Europe. Over time, however, they would adopt native Old East Slavic language and customs. Many Norse names would also soon become common Slavic names. Ingvar became Igor, Yaroslav became Yaroslav, Elgi, Oleg, Valdemar, Vladimir, along with some less common names. Diri became Dir, and Askel, Askold, though these two names will now become relevant. Because Rurik's successor Igor was too young to rule, the Varangian Oleg, probably a relative of Rurik, was chosen to rule as Igor's regent. Under Oleg, the Varangians became more powerful, defeating neighbouring Slavic tribes and gaining tribute from them. In 907, Oleg ambitiously set his sights on Constantinople, or Miklagard as the Norse knew it, which was the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. Sailing with a large fleet down the Dnipro, across the Black Sea and along the Strait of Marmara, he did not take the Roman city but secured lucrative trading rights for the Viking Rus. But there was another city Oleg sought to capture for himself, Kiev, which had since come under the rule of Viking Rus related to the Rurik dynasty, Askold and Dir. Oleg conquered Kiev in 882 after defeating Askold and Dir. He proclaimed it capital of the Varangian Slavic realm, now known as the Kievan Rus. This was the birth of the first East Slavic state, the birthplace of Ukraine, Russia and Belarus. The term Rus, initially referring to the Viking settlers in Eastern Europe, would centuries later lend its name to Russia, Belarus and Ruthenia, a Latin name for Ukraine. Separate political entities would not emerge for centuries later. Moving forward in time to 988, Prince Valdemar, or Vladimir, made an unprecedented move in his people's history. He accepted Eastern Christianity as the religion of the Rus. This was certainly influenced by their proximity to the Byzantine Empire, whose Orthodox missionaries braved the dangerous lands around the Balkans and Black Sea region to spread the word of God. In particular, the brothers Kyrillos and Methodios, who had brought Christianity to the Rus, also introduced a wide-ranging innovation. The Greek alphabet, used first as Golgothic script in order to preach Old Church Slavonic. This is now known as Cyrillic, which takes its name from Kyrillos, or Cyril in English. It's also for this reason that Eastern Orthodox Church rites are heavily influenced by the Greeks. Vladimir the Great, as he was now known, also adopted a symbol, the Trizub, which today is a national symbol of Ukraine. Moving towards the 11th century, Yaroslav, or Yaroslav the Wise, reigns over a prosperous and secure Rus state. They trade in furs, beeswax, honey, metals, timber, slaves and amber, to name a few commodities. And their trading network flows from the Baltic Sea into Novgorod, down the Dnieper River to Kiev, and further south towards the Black Sea, which linked the Rus to the Byzantine, Khazar and Abbasid empires. In 1054, however, Yaroslav died, leaving a power struggle between his potential successors. Ultimately, the lands of the Rus split into principalities. These were Kiev, Halish-na-Volyn, Chernihiv, Pereslav, Vladimir Sudzal, Novgorod, Smolensk, Polotsk, Rostov, and Tmut-Karagan. These principalities would lay the foundations for future Slavic states. Today these lands exist in Ukraine, Russia and Belarus. In Ukraine sits Halish Oblast, Volyn Oblast, Chernihiv Oblast and Pereyaslav, as well as the capital Kiev. Vladimir Sudzal would later split into Tver and Muscovy, following the founding of Moscow in the 12th century, today Russia's capital. Along with this city, Novgorod, Smolensk, Tmut-Karagan and Rostov are today in Russia. Novgorod, as a republic of its own, eventually submitted to Muscovy in the 15th century. Polotsk sits in modern-day Belarus. Succession wars followed, with rival disputes commonplace. By the 13th century, these territories, while not fully independent of one another, had a high degree of autonomy. Central power over the Rus states had weakened greatly. This division could not come at a worse time. A new nomadic power from the east would come to very nearly destroy the entire Rus civilization, the Mongols.